What's up, YouTube? It's your boy AP, and today I'm breaking down Spark Stormweaver in a fully updated endgame build guide for patch 0.1.1. We're going to be starting this video off by focusing in on how to deal with the hardest content in the game. So think T4 Arbiter, T4 Simulacrum, all the T4 bosses. I would really like to empower you guys to do content out of your comfort zone, and I'm not simply going to be telling you guys to scale your damage further. I'm going to be giving real applications that you can put on your character regardless of your current damage and investment level, which will help make these fights more palatable. Moving off of this, I'll go over all the skill gem and sport gem changes. There have been a few bug fixes with the patch notes, so some skill gems are going to be slightly altered. And then we'll wrap up the video going over my character's gear as well as my new passive tree. If this build seems out of reach in terms of your budget, don't worry. I have a Spark playlist in the video description that starts at exactly 0 budget league start, and the videos progress and will hold your hand all the way up to a point where maybe you can reach this state. So there is guides out there for every level of investment. You can just reference that playlist. Before I move into the content of this video, I want to give a quick word from our sponsor today, ExitLag. ExitLag is an app that stabilizes and lowers ping in thousands of games by optimizing your route to the servers. This could be a game changer if you're someone affected by the frequent server disconnections and rubber banding issues of Path of Exile's early access launch. ExitLag offers a wide range of online service solutions, including AI route optimizing to find the best routes for data packets in real time. It also offers a dynamic stabilizer which routes your packets through 4 different paths simultaneously to ensure a faster delivery. It provides scalable infrastructure with over 1,000 servers in all locations across the world, as well as a diagnostic center to troubleshoot your specific issues. Head to their website, create an account, download ExitLag, and install it in under a minute. Once you're set up, you can select almost any game, your ideal routing, and apply it. Up until January 26th, there is a holiday offer for 50% off annual subscriptions and even further discounts if you use a group plan. Sign up with coupon code PRINCESS to support the channel today. Let's jump into the bossing skill rotation for Spark, which is a series of buttons we press right before extremely difficult content in order to drastically improve our damage. Some examples of a good use case for this setup would be right before a pinnacle boss such as Arbiter comes out of his immunity phase. We also have all the other pinnacle bosses, and also you can use this during the last couple waves of a simulacrum in order to have massive damage for the first half of that wave, which will make the second half of those difficult simulacrum waves a lot more manageable. Okay, so everything starts off by slamming down the Sigil of Power ring. Now this gives us a buff, and we're going to have to charge it up by spending a lot of mana. It's easiest to just hold down Spark until this hits 4. After Sigil of Power is fully charged, we're going to want to drop 2 Orbis Storms immediately under where the boss is expecting to come out of immunity. We're going to drop Flame Wall, and we're going to press Soul Offering once, which is going to bring out our staff and spawn 2 skeletons. Now, right before the boss spawns, we're going to want to press Soul Offering a second time, which is going to kill these skeletons and give us this 13-second damage buff. And we're also going to want to cast Conductivity as the final part of the skill rotation directly under the boss. Now, at this point, you should still have everything up because we'll have done this all extremely fast, and we just start casting Spark. You do need to be standing pretty close to the boss within the Orbis Storms radius in order for the Orbis Storms to hit and apply exposure, but also we are using Cast on Shock Lightning Conduit, which requires us to be pretty close range as well. Now, the Lightning Conduit is going to absolutely chunk through the boss's life, but it is going to chunk through the mana at an equal rate. And you are not going to be able to maintain this unless you have a relatively expensive flask called Melting Maelstrom. However, this will fully restore our mana so that the Lightning Conduit Cast on Shock can keep up its massive damage potential. Okay, so we're going to go through this setup at the actual in-game speed you're going to do it, and I'll have my tooltip up so you can have an approximate idea of how much extra damage this is actually doing. So right now my Spark character is sitting at 131,000, and do keep in mind for mapping I have Shock Siphon as well as Temporalis, so if I were in a mapping setup I would be at 87. But Shock Siphon is only on kill. Does it restore energy shields? So we're replacing that with Considered Casting for bossing. And Temporalis does absolutely nothing for bossing. So we're replacing that with just a high energy shield rare armor. And we're even just turning off the blink in order to make use of Cast on Shock. So I should note this setup does require 60 extra spirit, which I will be going over how to get that in the gearing section. Okay, so at 131,000, slam down Sigil of Power, charge it up. Now we're sitting at 200,000. The Orb of Storms, the Flame Wall do not add to the damage. However, killing the skeletons do, and we go up to 326,000, and that is a 2.5 times increase of our tooltip. However, we are getting a lot more damage than that because the Orb of Storms is actually doing a decent amount of damage. We have 2 of them, and Orb of Storms is applying exposure at roughly 50%. And the way you can conceptualize exposure is a 50% magnitude of exposure means the enemy is taking 50% increased damage. And you can sort of conceptualize that as they're taking 50% more damage. That's an easy way of explaining it, although it's not quite that because of resistances. Conductivity, you can conceptualize it exactly the same as exposure. It is also whatever the number on your conductivity curse, you're doing that much more damage. For my setup, we're also using lightning damage as lucky, which in this case, combined with Wildstorm, you can just multiply that final number by roughly 33%. So it's 326,000 times 1.33. It's like 433,000 on the Spark. And that's not even counting the Cast on Shock Lightning Conduit, which is doing a huge amount of damage as well. All right, so that is the setup. Now, this will take a little bit of practice to get used to, although you aren't really using this in most situations. And it is nice to have these buttons for the rare cases where you do need to have that massive amount of damage. As for the skill gems and supports, you can find all of this linked in the Mobalytics guide in the video description. However, this video format is also going to be important to watch because I'm going to break down how to set up our reservation using weapon swaps in order to squeeze this by with only 60 spirit. So first up, we have Sigil of Power supported by Magnified Effect. Some of you guys are going to be asking me, how the hell is it so big? Well, first of all, that's what she said, but we're also using a weapon set to do this. So for my staff, it's on weapon set 1, and we're taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points in area of effect over here, and then a pathing node with 1, 2, 3, 4 points in area of effect over here. And that's all we're scaling. When you do weapon sets, since we're taking all of these points for the staff, we're going to have to take an equal number of points for your main weapon, which is what you're going to be using while casting Spark. And for those, it doesn't matter exactly what you take, but you do want to take nodes that are purely damage, because all of our damage is coming out when we have our wand out. So for that reason, I am taking these nodes on the other weapon swap. I'm taking these damage nodes here. Projectile speed only really matters with the wand out, and some cast speed here as well. But you know, just make sure that you're not using skill effect duration, because we do want that on all the spells we're casting on the offhand. And probably you don't want to take off your defenses. Next up, we have, well, the implicit of the wand doesn't matter. Oh, I should also mention for Sigil of Power, you only need level 18. You don't need to spend extra for level 19, because level 18 isn't up to hit the breakpoint we need. So you want a Chiming Staff on your weapon swap. Next up, we have Spark, and we are going to configure this to only be on whatever damage weapon set you have. And for Spark, we have Arcane Tempo, Acceleration, Inspiration, Controlled Destruction. For mapping, I use Shock Siphon. For the bossing setup, we use Considered Casting. Shock Siphon is nice because it gives us Recover Energy Shield when we kill a shocked enemy, and all enemies are getting shocked because we have enough damage to do that. This helps counter burning ground maps, it helps counter less recovery maps, and it's also sort of a pseudo lifesteal just to be extremely tanky. Next up is Archmage. You want this to be level 21. You can either use Lightning Mastery support on a level 20, or you can corrupt one up to level 21. And this is only going to be on your wand as well. You don't want this to be turned on when we bring out the sigil power because we're going to reserve other stuff on that. After that, I have Blink. Now, you can optionally use Temporalis in a mapping setup. I don't think Cast on Shock is very good for mapping, so I don't like to use it. So for that case, we just have Blink. And, you know, this just feels so nice for, you know, basically everything in the game except for a Pinnacle boss. The reasoning for this is because we're not really scaling Cast on Shock. Cast on Shock does not need to be scaled in order to hit unique enemies. And it's just so bad against rares, magic, and normal monsters that there's no reason to use this in any other situation. So Blink is just going to make the build feel really nice. You can support that by Ingenuity. If you are opting to use a Temporalis for all other content, I believe the breakpoint is skills have to have minus 3.6 seconds to cool down. Just keep in mind, you will get approximately like 0.1 second of delay between casts for every like 0.1 roll you have worse than that. Next up is Soul Offering. Soul Offering is supported by Danse Macabre, Ablation, and Persistence. And this gives us 60% more multiplier for 13 seconds. And we are setting this only to the staff. Don't have this set to your wand. Next up, Orb of Storms. This is a nice amount of damage, and it's also how we inflict the exposure I was talking about earlier. So we need lightning exposure support, strip away, conduction, overabundance, so that we can have 2 of them. And this last one doesn't matter. So if you're using lightning mastery on the Archmage, just like this doesn't even need to be 6-linked, honestly. But it is a little bit more damage, so you might as well throw it on there if you can. Next up is Conductivity, supported by Heightened Curse, Focus Cursed, and Hex Bloom. And I have Conductivity on the wand setup. So Heightened Curse and Focus Curse add more damage. And the way Hex Bloom works is, this is pretty good for stuff like Simulacrum when the enemies have plus Res, because when you kill one monster, it will spread to the other monsters. And plus elemental resistances is the hardest modifier for Simulacrum, and this just sort of counters it. Flame Wall. This is supported by Fire Mastery, Spell Cascade, Fortress, and that's bound to the wand setup. So here we have Cast on Shock. This is only for bossing. So we have a Cast on Shock, Lightning Conduit, supported by Impetus, Energy Retention, Ellie Focus, and Rising Tempest. Now, some people use Conk Effect, and some people use Considered Casting and Cast on Shock, and I just want to make this very clear. All Conk Effect does is lowers the AoE. It does not increase the damage, so if you're doing this, you are like nerfing its ability to hit stuff, and you are not doing anything for your damage. I believe there's also a cost multiplier, so that's just griefing yourself. Considered Casting did actually work up until the patch. The text on this implies it shouldn't work because it works for spells that you cast yourself, but this is being automated through Cast on Shock, and that was fixed. So that's why I do not recommend this. We're using Rising Tempest instead, which is a 12% more elemental damage multiplier. And if you do press Flame Wall, it becomes 24%. Another option would be Execute, which is a 40% multiplier on low life. So you multiply that by 0.35, that's where low life is. So this is actually like 14% more damage. So you might think this is better than the 12% here if you're not using Flame Wall. But you have to keep in mind with Execute, If the enemy has energy shield, and a lot of these pinnacle bosses do have energy shield, you know, it's even worse, right? Because low life is only when the life is at 35%. So you have to chunk through all the energy shield, all the life, and bring it down. So I do not recommend that, but it is another option that you could use here. The final link is Skeletal Cleric, and this needs to be on the staff. So you're going to have 2 Skeletal Clerics. And that's why we're turning off these other, that's why we're turning off, what was it, Archmage? Because you're not pressing skills here anyways, so you don't need that extra Archmage damage, but now we're able to summon these 2 skeletons, which reserve some spirit, 40 spirit total, while still only using 60 spirit for this and 100 spirit for the Archmage while we are doing damage. We don't need to get extra 40 spirit. So that's the little trick here. As for my gear, the first thing I want to touch on is how to get the 60 spirit to fit in all of these extra buffs. So you get 100 spirit during the campaign, and we can get up to 36 spirit on an Against the Darkness when combined with Controlled Metamorphosis. So you want to have a massive ring on the Controlled Metamorphosis, which allows us to pick up Pure Power, Eldritch Will, and these 2 nodes that are within the AoE of our Against the Darkness Time Lost Diamond. This Time Lost Diamond, the only thing I was looking for myself was the 8 to 12 spirit, which you can divine up to 12 with Divine Orbs. The other node, well, 3 lightning res isn't that great. You could probably get something better if you had more currency. It doesn't matter too much. So I'm getting 36 since it's perfectly divined. That means I only need to get 24 elsewhere. And the helmet, when corrupted, can hit between 20 and 30 spirit. So if you do divine this well, you're going to have more options on trade because you can get between 24 and 30 spirit, and that'll be enough. So I was just searching for a decent helmet that also had this particular corruption, and that solves spirit for me. So for my gear, on the wand, I have videos on how to optimize for damage, or how like fixed damage, I believe is what it's called, and that goes over how to buy a wand. There's wand links there. The level and the cast speed are most important on this. Obviously, mana is nice because it's giving you damage. It's giving you defense in terms of mana, which is also being converted into energy shield. It's giving you like both sides of the coin. Increased spell damage is great. I think gain as extra isn't the best. So this isn't by any means a perfect one, but it's pretty good because we do have the +5 and we do have the really high cast speed. We touched on the helmet. Basically, for every piece of gear, you just want to understand that 1 intelligence is equal to 2 mana, and the total energy shield amount on the piece of gear is basically just that amount of mana. And the more mana you have, the more damage you're getting from Archmage. Also, the more mana you have, the more energy shield you're getting because Everlasting Gaze converts mana into energy shield. Okay, so yeah, helmet just resists, and then a bunch of int, energy shield, mana. On the shield, you want to get +2 to all spells, cast speed. Again, lots of mana, energy shield. You could go for increased spell damage or increased lightning damage, and then you will have less mana from it, so less defense, but you might have more damage. For the boots, again, just like a lot of these same stats, we're going for energy shield, mana, resistance, intelligence. I've tried back and forth between Katako's and a rare glove. I'll just show you guys the difference so that you guys can help make up your own mind which one you want to go for. Let's see, it's like 90,000 with a decent rare pair of gloves. It goes up to 106. These aren't even that great. You can get a lot more energy shield and scale it up even further. Basically, what a rare pair of gloves is going to do is it's going to help cap your res. The res can be pretty tight, so you might be forced into a rare pair of gloves. Rare pair of gloves is going to have a lot more energy shield. It's going to have a lot more mana. It can have intelligence, so it has a lot of stuff the Katakos don't. It also doesn't reduce your cast speed. But the thing is, Katakos gives us Electrocute. Now, Electrocute is a 5-second disable on everything. On Pinnacle bosses, on map monsters, literally everything in the game gets 5-second disabled. And that is just so nice at, preventing damage. Because there's not a lot of things that don't die within 5 seconds. A lot of stuff die a lot quicker than that. So this just makes the build feel pretty much immortal. If you're playing in hardcore, I'd say this is a must. If you're in softcore, you could try both of them. Just understand if you are dying a bit without it, if you remember to swap this back on, you're going to stop dying, almost certainly. Ingenuity Belt multiplies the rings. It's good value. Dream Fragments, if you can get it. It gives us immunity to Chilled Ground, immunity to Freeze. It's also a lot of damage from mana and a lot of mana regen. Technically, a Breach Ring, full DPS Breach Ring is more damage than the Dream Fragments, but this is just such good quality of life. The only downside of Dream Fragments is it costs around 100 Divine, so not everybody can afford this. Technically speaking, since I am an Energy Shield mana hybrid build, you could just get a Freeze Charm. The builds that go totally Glass Cannon, like full mana, 0 energy shield, they do hit a lot harder, and there's a lot of upside to that. I'll probably make a video in the future going over that. However, those builds will get stunned on any hit, because energy shield protects stuns, mana does not protect stuns. But in this case, if you do have Dream Fragments, you might as well just put on a Stun Charm. For the Breach Ring, you have some options here. I opted for high mana regeneration. You probably are going to want both these no matter what. Increased cast speed is great. You can get rarity on the prefix and suffix. This is one way to squeeze in some rarity. I wouldn't bother going over 100 rarity. Slippery Jim did some tests, and it doesn't seem like rarity scales that well above 100%. In fact, I would say rarity is completely optional. You don't need any rarity on this build. However, this is an easy place to get it. And do remember, everything on our rings are a lot higher than their value because the Ingenuity Belt is multiplying them. So yeah, if you want the pure damage ring, for prefixes, you're going to want lightning damage, mana, and then the last one doesn't matter. I guess you get rarity. And for the suffixes, you would want cast speed, mana regeneration rate. No, honestly, I guess I'd get probably rarity as well there. Or some sort of resistance. Or actually, intelligence technically would be the most damage. Because that gets converted into mana, which is a lot of damage. So those are some options there. You could just use your Breach Ring to fix your res as well. Everlasting Gaze, it needs to have a full 30% of maximum mana as extra energy shield, and you want to have Lightning Rod because while that doesn't show up on the tooltip, just understand it is 33% more damage on average. For the jewels, the point of these two jewels is to get me up to 40% pierce. The reason for this is when I shoot into a pack, 60% of my projectiles are just going to hit that pack, not pierce, and when they don't pierce, they're going to chain, so that pack is going to get blown up by the chain. Spark doesn't shotgun, so you don't need every single projectile to hit that first pack. Now, 40% of the projectiles are going to go through that pack and hit something behind it, and there's only one, there's like 40% pierce, so you can't pierce twice, so once they hit the next group of monsters, now they're going to chain in that monster pack. So that's giving us the ability to kill right in front of us and far away from us in a single cast. So that's the importance of these two. Otherwise, you can just look at the Spark playlist. There is a deep dive on jewels, and I do go over all your options there. There's like a trade link. Basically, I'm just trying to scale Magnitude of Shock elsewhere. Magnitude's pretty good. We got a really expensive jewel over here. Prism of Belief, it gets +1 to +3 to level all Spark skill gems. That's incredibly powerful. It's also very expensive. And yeah, that is the gearing. As for the passive tree, obviously you can just look in the Mobalytivs guide in the video description. Force of Will, Strike Twice, Scouring Winds. I've gone over the reasoning for all of this in so many videos in the Spark playlist. I don't think it's worth drawing out this video explaining everything we're doing here. You can just sort of copy it. If you haven't watched any of the previous content, just use the Spark playlist. There's different video guides at different points, and they all break down the reasons why we go certain keystones. I mean, this is like slightly optimized differently than before, but you know, if you've seen one of the trees, you've kind of seen them all. So I think we can just wrap up this video here. So in conclusion, to wrap up this video, yes, this is a Telesorc update. However, I do want to stress, like, you don't have to use Temporalis. You can just go for a different body armor. In this case, you would just have the blink on a slightly longer cooldown, and obviously everything else is the same. The benefit of a rare body armor is obviously more damage, more tankiness. The benefit of a Temporalis is, in my opinion, we have enough tankiness, enough defense. We can lose some of it just to zoom really fast. But yeah, this is quite expensive, and until you save up for it, you can feel free to, you know, just have to walk a little bit more. It's not the end of the world. All right, hope you enjoy the video. I should be live on Twitch streaming this build when this goes up. Peace.